Hey everybody, welcome to United Fans. I'm Notch.
I'm Mike.
And Mike's here today because Kyle couldn't make it.
I think it's like 2.5 United fans today.
I think so. I think you're actually the third United fan, the supporters group. Are you going to start a Honduras chapter for us?
I think so, yeah. Yep.
Well, Kyle's taking care of some business and he's out, so Mike's joining us. As I've mentioned on the show before, Mike's done some video work for us. Terrific stuff. He's been helping out as a producer too, doing really important stuff for our podcast. Thank you again for helping us out and thanks for joining us today. What we're going to talk about later on is that Bill Stenross is going to join us to talk about Ottawa and Minnesota United's game this past weekend. A memory that I am trying to actively block out as we speak. And seriously, as soon as we're done filming tonight, I'm going to try to forget it as quickly as possible.
Get some hard alcohol and drown your sorrows. And
I've already made enough references to substance abuse on this show, which I don't need to give people the wrong idea. But yeah, I'll just sleep on it. Anyway, what I want to talk to you, Mike, about was Minnesota United stadium deal. Minnesota United messed up last week. They decided to release all the stadium stuff. I think it was on Tuesday or Wednesday. We filmed the show on Monday, so I didn't get to talk about it on the show. And I think that was a critical public relations error because, if we had put it on our show, there wouldn't have been so much political opposition. It'd be getting passed as we speak.
Yeah, I think Betsy Hodges would have been like, "Yep, let's go with the plan. I think it's the perfect plan."
2 United fans are supporting this. We're good with it in the Minneapolis City Council. But in all seriousness, the plan has run into not a lot of opposition, but some people saying some stuff that's opposed. It's entirely privately financed. They're asking for some tax exemptions.
Different than a subsidy, in my opinion.
Absolutely different in my opinion as well. One of the things you were mentioning was some of the things that people do around a soccer game that they currently cannot do in Blaine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like if you go to a Twins game, same area as the proposed stadium. You go to downtown to have a couple burgers, some drinks before the game. Mm-hmm. You might go downtown after the game too, because it's just a short walk. There's tons of breweries there that you can go to. I mean, it's just a really cool place. Lots of increased tax revenue in around that area. With the new stadium, and it's a pretty downtrodden area too right now. Mm-hmm. The West Loop, I think they're calling it. Yeah. I think it would be a really important place to kind of regenerate with this.
Absolutely, and like you're saying, the other thing I'll mention about spending money, quote unquote, is where are the places that I've gone and visited and have fun at recently? Portland, Seattle, Kansas City, Indianapolis, all places with active, thriving downtown soccer stadiums. Kansas City is a little out of the city, but it's still a soccer-specific stadium. I went to visit family in Atlanta. Went to a soccer game at Silverbacks Park. Ended up spending a bunch of money. This is something that's going to bring in revenue from outside the state for Minneapolis. So I think it's a great idea. You think it's a great idea.
I think it's an awesome idea, yeah.
A lot of us think it's a great idea. If you're in support, if you live in the city of Minneapolis, write to your city councilor. Let them know that this is something that you want. If you don't live in Minneapolis, write to the politicians that you see in the news, that you see mentioned as important for this process, and let them know that this is something you would enjoy, that you would spend money in Minneapolis.
That's the key, yes.
Supporting.
You're going to be in Minneapolis, you're going to be in their area, supporting the businesses that are there.
Exactly, because we know that support exists, but the politicians don't necessarily know it's there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, enough of that. Let's now take a quick break and come back with Bill to discuss what happened in Ottawa.
What's up, guys? I'm Landon Donovan, Mr. Manny Lagos' better half, and you're watching 2 United fans, 2 weird United fans, but cool.
Hey everybody, I'm back again with Bill Stenross from Northern Pitch. He's here to talk about, an infuriating game we saw last Saturday, Bill.
Infuriating, it doesn't go far enough. That was really frustrating, particularly after watching them draw 0-0 to Tampa Bay and then lose to Ottawa. Just not the start to the season that we were expecting.
Not at all. I mean, this gives us flashbacks of the 2013 season, and I think it's because we were spoiled a little bit last year. We came to expect winning. We came to expect, this rabid attacking style of football. And this time, it was different.
Absolutely. I mean, we've got 11 great players out on the pitch, and yet we had a terrible team. And I think that's, in one sentence sums up everything that was wrong with the game. It was some decent play by individuals, but nothing coalescing into anything of approaching a quality side.
It looked to me like also they just didn't have that kind of killer instinct, the decisiveness that you need to go after the ball sometimes, to take it and to take those shots, the kind of real desire to run out there and get that victory.
Yeah, I mean, too often you saw people who were on the same half of the field with the ball walking. When we had the ball, instead of making runs either towards the ball or towards goal to get open or create space for other players, it just really felt like you got past the ball and then you were supposed to do something with it instead of passing the ball. Another thing we got used to last year is just the play out of the back. Calvano would pass it to Vicentini, who would pass it back to Diaz, who would pass it out to Mendes, who would pass it to Venegas, and it would just cycle its way around the field, eventually forcing our opponents to just either drop all the way back or get out of position. And instead, Ottawa was able to maintain their shape. They were not a great team on Saturday, but Minnesota was not a great team either. And although Minnesota had a chance at the end with a penalty call that wasn't made, Ottawa deserved the win. Minnesota didn't.
Where do you think the weakness is in this team?
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of things that I think need to be fixed. One is there's not that killer instinct you talked about. It just didn't feel like there were 11 players out there playing passionately, wanting to win the game. Too many of them just felt like, it just seemed like when you've got a great team or players that expect to be the great team, feeling like, oh, we'll score. We don't need to press. We'll score. We don't need to work hard. It'll come. And it took Ottawa scoring a goal and Khalif Al-Hassan coming on before we saw any kind of spark, any kind of attacking intensity, any kind of prolonged possession that was dangerous. Minnesota possessed the ball occasionally, but just did nothing with it.
Let's talk about Khalif for a second, because,
Sure.
Honestly, I think Khalif played like Ibsen was hyped like he would play. Mm-hmm. And when Khalif came on, he was showing skill. He was making those deep runs. And then some people are saying he didn't quite have it in the box, which is what his reputation in Portland has been. But I thought he was very, very good.
I mean, he brought something that the team was missing. A player willing to run from box to box. He was coming back. He was going forward. He was linking up with players. Mm-hmm. I know, another player that we want to talk about is Steele. Because Steele has, a lot of people are criticizing Steele, and some of it's justified. He's not done what I think we were expecting him to do, what he was expected to do when he came in. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he has nobody out there. He's out on the wing. He gets past the ball. Usually it's a longer cross or something, and it's Davis making a run, and that felt like it. Nobody else was making a decent run until Khalif came on. And then all of a sudden you saw Steele and Khalif and Davis overloading zones against Ottawa or making great runs for each other. I mean, then they started looking like an actual team. Granted, Khalif was the spark plug, but the other players were able to play off him more.
I was actually, when I was taking down notes, my notes said Johnny Steele is getting weaker as the game goes on. That gas tank is running down. Mm-hmm. But then, like you said, when Khalif came on and that urgency came in, he kicked back in. And in the last few minutes, we saw Steele doing that kind of really fancy footwork kind of moment, which I know you have a comment about some of the things we've been seeing some of these Minnesota United players try to do when it comes to dribbling.
Yeah. Well, I think dribbling and then passing in the final third. And then also just the defense in so many cases in the game, they were trying to be too cute. Too cute. Yeah. I mean, they are gorgeous. I mean, we can all agree that Minnesota has the most attractive team. But I'm talking more about their play style. They were looking for that extra little pass, that little dummy, or that back heel to spring open a player. When you know what, you're better than Ottawa. You could score. Just score a goal. And same thing on defense. There were too many times where the ball was just bouncing around in the box. That should never happen. Not when we have more players than they do. They shouldn't end up with the ball and then be able to take shots on goal. We should clear it. But we feel so confident in our playing ability that we're somehow so much better than the teams. Mm-hmm. We forget those fundamentals of, if the ball's on the ground in the box and there's a player 2 feet away from you, just get it out of there. Don't try and dribble it.
Well, and that's what happened during Heineman's goal. You know, the ball gets crossed over to him. He's running it into the box. Take me through what you saw there.
Well, what I saw was kind of the style that Minnesota typically plays is when the ball gets crossed out wide like that, the fullback on that side isn't necessarily expected to come back and be the primary on defense. Instead, it's a center back that comes across.
Calvano ran across.
Yeah, Calvano comes across and takes on Heineman and does a pretty decent job of taking on Heineman. Gets a little unlucky, though. Mm-hmm. The ball bounces off of Thiago and right back to Heineman, who gets around Calvano. Well, part of the reason that Calvano comes out for that is it allows Kallman to come back and provide that secondary support on those kind of attacks. And he just misses it. He misjudges his run and ends up behind Heineman and basically fouls him. Heineman doesn't go down because he doesn't need to. He's got an easy shot on goal. And I think I don't consider Njak being much at fault at that. Heineman was at a good angle. He had the entire goal. There wasn't a lot that Njak could do. Even a quality keeper like him is not going to be able to stop many goals like that.
So while we're talking about the back line, let's talk about Thiago. He got to wear the captain's armband until Ibsen was hurt and Pitch was brought back on. Pitch Golden, our regular captain, did not start. Mm-hmm. So how would you rate Thiago's performance?
I was actually rating him pretty well until that happened, until that goal. I felt like we weren't seeing those end-line runs, which are typically his responsibility because he's the primary on those kind of runs. And he wasn't getting beat around the corner. He wasn't getting beat to that end line, which is a terrible position for the defense to be in, because they can cross it back to the in front of the goal, and then all of a sudden you're completely shifting nearly 180 and trying to still play defense on shots, and that's very hard to do. And we've seen it a number of times. We saw it against Tampa Bay, and then we saw it a lot last season, where teams would get really good shots or goals with that kind of play. That didn't happen. Now, the Heineman, it was a little bit unlucky, but also he's one of our highest paid players. He's got to make that tackle. That's why he's there, to make that tackle to stop their playmaker from coming in on goal, and he didn't. Mm-hmm. And so that was frustrating to me. And I think I'm a little bit more critical of him because he's had some problems in the past, and then he didn't totally fix it this game.
I mean, one of the other things that really quick I'll mention is that, Pitch Golden, who last season, early on at least, he was doing a lot for the team. You could say he was a pretty strong presence on the field.
Absolutely.
And 2 games now he's played. He's given up at least 4 free kicks right outside the box. Mm-hmm. He's looked kind of tentative again, looked kind of slower, and I don't know if it's age or what it is for him, but he's just not looked like he's a very effective player on the field, which is very surprising for someone who wears the armband, who was such a strong presence last year, and I don't know if he's going to get that starting position back ever.
He didn't show a lot at the end of last season that would warrant him being on the field, at least as a starter this season. It was something that I looked at and was struggling with before the season started. Where's Pitch going to play? And we saw in the preseason he was playing as a defender. He was a backup defender, and yet in the first 2 games he's come in as a holding midfielder, which I think he's a pretty decent player in that role. But we're not playing that 4-2, 3-1 that we were at the beginning of last season. Instead, it seems more of they described it on the broadcast as a 4-3-2-1, kind of that Christmas tree look. I think of it more of a 4-1-4-1. In any way that you kind of write it down, mm-hmm. There's only one holding defensive midfielder there, and I don't think he has the strength, the skill to be that one midfielder right now.
Well, it was surprising to me personally to see when Ibsen went off that he came on instead of, say, Jordan or someone else with a slightly more attacking presence. But anyway, let's talk about 2 things next week that I'm excited to see maybe is we saw 2 on top this time.
Yes.
Pablo got brought on with Christian. Do you think that experiment continues next weekend?
I'm not really sure what to expect next weekend because we've got a team that we've been told over and over again that every position is currently up for competition, that there's depth at every position. Well, maybe it's time to see some of that because we're not seeing the quality of play we need out of those players. Mm-hmm. And so will we see a little bit different formation from Manny Lagos, or will he do what he typically does, which is give a lot of these players kind of the benefit of the doubt, let them settle in, let them grow with the season? I personally am not too impressed with Campos up top right now. Mm-hmm. I just think he's too slow. He was never a fast forward, but now with the still coming off that knee injury, he just isn't the player that he could be, and I'd be a little bit concerned putting him on for a full 90. Do I see us if it's a close game, him coming on? Absolutely. And I'd love to see him come on for 30 minutes, give him a lot of time up there, particularly because he came on for Mendes and Mendes didn't do a lot this game. He was kind of lost.
He was making a lot of weak runs, a lot of weak passes. I was not impressed with Daniel Mendes at all. But one thing I will tell you is going to happen this weekend is Julius James is going to get booked again for San Antonio. This is his first game back after a red card suspension. So, yay, good for us. But, all right, we will see you back next weekend with Bill again to talk about what happens.
Hopefully we'll be talking about a win and...
You know, the 10 goals, right, there won't be enough time to discuss each of our 10 goals, and,
Yeah.
So, anyway, thanks a lot, guys. We'll take a break and be right back.
Hey, I'm Brent Coleman, and this is Two United Fans.
Thank you very much for watching another episode of Two United Fans. We're glad to have you here.
Absolutely. Now, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, you like us on Facebook, you... what's it called on Twitter? I think it's called follow. You should follow us on Twitter. You should find us on services that we're not on, like Instagram, too. Read our blog on Northern Pitch. Sometimes we write stuff, too. Mm-hmm. And finally,
listen to us. If you're tired of looking at these faces, you can stare at a blank screen and still hear our beautiful voices with TUF Cast. This is a weekly audio pod we're putting out. Check us out on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and... something else that we automatically upload to. We are everywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again. See you later.
Goodbye.